Hey there, just wanted to do this, as the title says, DK Therapy. I don't know about you all, but I have like a small selection of games that I can just kind of pick up and play at any given point in time. And I've done them so much, or I've played them so much, or I've gotten good enough with them that it's kind of therapeutic. It's just kind of a way to just get your mind kind of doing nothing at all and just kind of wind down. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Obviously, I'm in a state of winding down in my brain. So this playthrough is not complete whatsoever. I don't try to get the Kong letters. I don't avoid like secret areas, but I don't try to find them. I don't try to get there. I mean, so if you're a completionist or if you're trying to see like, you know, how to play the game really well, this is not going to be the right the right video for you. I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but I just know how I played this, and it was really just to get through it. I just wanted to see, like, because I watched a few gamers, younger gamers. You know, I don't know that I'd be qualified as a boomer necessarily. I feel actually weird just using that term, which maybe makes me a boomer. I don't really know, but I don't. You know, younger people who didn't necessarily grow up with this. Like, this is my wheelhouse. This was in my peak. When the Nintendo came out, I was 6 years old. So maybe a little young, but kind of right in that sweet spot as well. And then the Super Nintendo, instead of trying to play to a younger, like try to keep the audience, the same audience as the Nintendo, they actually kind of grew the system with, it felt like the system grew with me. So Super Nintendo was when I was probably the most coordinated. When I used to play the Nintendo, like I'd be holding the controller and I would be holding it down towards my lap, but I'd be doing this, like every time I jump, the controller would jump with me. And so you just develop more coordination as you get a little bit older. So I was in my teens when Donkey Kong Country came out. I remember getting this for Christmas that year, and it was anticipated. It was the first time they actually sent out a video. Like, I got a video cassette in the mail, and I wish I still had it because it's probably a collectible right now. But it was like it was really weird because, you know, usually VHS, you know, they had a decent weight to them because they were full. It was like a 2 or 2.5 hour movie was on there. This thing was like 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long, so it was like a really light tape. But it was just publicity. It was just, hey, you know, it was like a guy with long hair. It's kind of like in that MTV. Who's that guy? That guy talks like this. Pauly Shore. It's kind of in that era, in that time period. And so the guy kind of looked like Pauly Shore, and he's like, let's check out Nintendo. This is, you know, Rare headquarters or whatever it was. Let's check out what they're up to. And they had like all the, you know, all this banana themed stuff. And it was kind of cool, but it really was just showing off the graphics and showing off the system. And I don't know what determined who got what. Some people got like Metroid videos or something like that. I got Donkey Kong, and it really hyped me up for it, and I was thrilled to get it. But yeah, this kind of aged with me. But you know, I'm watching people who grew up with like the N64. That was their system. That was their childhood system. Trying to play this, and they really were kind of struggling. Or they would say, you know, these are known for being hard games. I think Donkey Kong Country 2 is considered a harder game by far, and I think it's a better game. Donkey Kong Country, I think, was better than a proof of concept, but not a lot more than a proof of concept. It was showing off the graphics, but to me, the platforming isn't all that difficult. Now, you're going to see there's 3 levels, I think. Because again, I'm as you can see, I have no hands. I'm watching, or this is playing. Past me is playing, and current me is commenting. Very little on the game itself, as it turns out, at the moment anyway. But you'll see, I think there were 3 levels that really gave me a hard time. I just kept making the same stupid mistakes, and I die here and there. But I think, you can tell by the length of the video, I clear it in about an hour and 15 minutes. But I wanted to try it after watching some of these younger players kind of struggle with it, and I was like, man, did I? Because I don't remember playing it that much. I mean, I definitely did. You can tell some levels I just kind of moved through it very quickly, indicative of me knowing the level pretty well, knowing what to expect. But then some of them I totally forgot where the snow, where the snow levels were in this. I thought it was you did your initial jungle level area stage thing, and then you went to a Gorilla Glacier, I think is what it's called. I thought that was the next area, but it's actually, I think, the 3rd area, and you go to Orangutan. I don't even know. So I don't know. I didn't know the game all that well. I didn't play it a ton. I feel like I beat it maybe 3 or 4 times, if that. But I remembered a lot of it. But I do. I think it's an easier platform. And the thing that was blowing my mind is that the guy who was struggling, he plays like the troll levels in Mario Maker 2, and those are exponentially harder in terms of platforming than this thing is. And yeah, he was struggling. I think he beat it. I think it was maybe like 2 hours or something. Maybe it might have been earlier than that. But anyway, so this is it's not to shame that or to say I'm amazing. I just wanted to see if it gave me more of a challenge that I remember, or what. And I think obviously if you've never played it before, there's going to be a lot of things that will surprise you. Some of the stuff. I mean, I remember going through this. I remember, having to practice. I mean, I didn't die all the time, but you learn little tricks here and there. And obviously I'm making mistakes that are a little out of character for me. Yeah, I just wanted to give it a shot. And Super Punch-Out is probably my first go-to game for just kind of blowing off steam, just playing, kind of letting my fingers do their thing and not really worrying about, not really having to worry about it, because I can beat that game with my eyes closed at this point. Not really. There are people who can. I'm not one of them. I cannot beat it with my eyes closed, but I can beat it relatively easy. But I've already done a video on that, on playing it, so I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and I was thinking, it was like, I want to play, but I don't want to do any commentary. I was like, well, that's perfect. With my new system, on a day that I don't necessarily feel like talking, I can just play the game and set it aside and do a video on it later. As it turns out, I played it earlier today, and then as I'm winding down for the evening, it's 7 o'clock at night, I'm like, I could do a commentary. Yeah, I'm a little more of a low level. I am still, for those of you who are waiting anxiously for the F-Zero conclusion, the expert level trilogy, that is coming, as is my the next Mario RPG. But both of those require a little more energy. This one, I was like I said, it's DK Therapy. The game is supposed to be therapy, and this commentary is supposed to be like, I'm not expelling a ton of energy here. I don't really have anything on my mind necessarily to talk about. I'm just kind of in a place where I have a little too much energy to just sit there and watch YouTube videos myself, but not enough energy to be truly productive, which is a weird place to be. And I've been like that for a while, but I mean, to be fair, I've been working in a graveyard job for the past 5 months, and I never really got on that time sink, because I worked security, various forms of security back when I was in my early 30s, and there was a time after about a week and a half I adjusted to that. Now, granted, it was a 12-hour. It was from 7 at night until 7 in the morning, or 6 at night until 6 in the morning. I think it was 7 to 7. But so it's a 12-hour chunk, and it was definitive. Each like you knew you were getting out at 7 o'clock. You knew you were like you didn't have to work a double shift. You couldn't work a double shift really. But it was the schedule was very set, and I remember getting used to it after a week and a half or so, and then I was going to bed at 10 in the morning, 9 or 10 in the morning, and waking up later in the day, and I think that's how I did it. I don't know, it doesn't really matter, but the bottom line is I was able to adjust. And so then when I had to go back onto day schedules, it took me about a week, a little less than it took me to adjust to nights, obviously, because days are my natural, I think probably most people's natural time of productivity, of being awake. That's what you expect. I don't know. That end, I should have definitely got that end. I think the game was cheating me, but whatever. Lost my train of thought. Ironic, as I'm watching what could pass as a train level, a minecart level, and I have lost my train of thought. Oh, getting used to it. So I know what it feels like to get used to being awake at night, and I never got that with this job. I was able to stay awake all night, but I was able to do that from day one. Granted, there were a few days where I was definitely feeling it a lot more than I was later on, but I just never had the energy. And so what made it really crappy was the weekends, because I'm supposed to, I need to keep my same schedule, so I need to be staying up through the night, but it's dark and there's nobody out there, and there's really nothing to do. If you're not working at that time, there's not a whole lot going on, and it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough. I felt very unproductive and a lot of low energy. Like I thought, I'll be able to make videos or do something like that on the weekend, and it just never happened, because I had no energy. I was just tired all the time. So yesterday, I think I got 7 hours of sleep for the first time, like solid 7. I hadn't slept for more than 5 hours at a time in the past 5 or 6 months. So I think last night, I think I got 7 hours. I don't know. I'll have to, because I don't remember what time I actually fell asleep. But I'm going to check on it tonight, and hopefully, man, if I got my 7 hours, then I am back in the saddle. Because you just realize how important sleep is when you don't get it, or steady sleep. You're like, okay, I'm functioning, but I know my brain is not operating at a high level right now. I know I'm not at my best. And that's a sucky way to go through your day and your night. So I'm just happy to be done with that particular season of my life, getting ready to move, and that's a whole other thing. I've got a laundry list of stuff I got to get done, but my first few days is just going to be recalibrating to a normal schedule, normal life. Yay, Diddy! And yeah, so I just thought I would just do this just to talk about stuff. So it's therapeutic, kind of just being able to chill. Although I will say, obviously I died a few times already, but I was like, man, I'm actually going on a pretty good run. I might be able to beat this in under an hour. And so I artificially put pressure on myself during what was supposed to be a chill and relaxed time. I was like, this is my chance to show everybody that I am an ace gamer. Because, obviously if you can beat Donkey Kong Country in an hour and a half, that makes you an ace gamer. It doesn't, really. I'm joking, of course. Just very dry. It's a fun game, but like I said, I think this is very much a proof of concept with a little... I mean, not to discredit the people who programmed this. I mean, the devs did a fantastic job with it. And I think it's a platformer that has a wide reach. It's not going to get your high-level platforming guys, but it does allow you to get a younger audience as well as an older audience that is just like, wow, the graphics are really cool. Oh, yeah, I almost made it through all that. But it's not... It didn't take it to the next level. All the secrets, like they're optional. They just gave you extra lives, and as you can see, even the amount of times that I die, I don't think we've gotten to it yet. There's the first winter level, the first snow level, and then there's like a few of the water levels just wrecked me. I was dying several times, multiple times. Those are the exact same. Those mean the same thing. See what I mean? Brain is still kind of mushy. See, I did die a few times, but on the whole, got through it with relative ease. That's to say, you don't need a ton of lives in this game. Obviously, if you're just starting out, especially if you're younger, you probably could use them all. But I was able to get by I didn't have to farm for them or anything. I just kind of picked up lives just by getting bananas and whatnot. I think I went to one bonus stage with the ostrich. Wow, how am I forgetting the ostrich's name? It's not Legs. It's, what the heck? Ostro the ostrich? That sounds horrible. I mean, I could look at the manual, but yeah, anyway, it's, the ostrich. I did one bonus level pretty much by accident, because once you get that third token, it's going to take you there, and you have to play it. So I was like, I'll get a few lives, why not? It's just stupid mistakes like that. A lot of times you can just run across the tire and hit jump, and it'll pop you up, but sometimes it doesn't. I wouldn't call the controls squishy, but there were a few inconsistencies in terms of how you interacted with, especially with some of the jump items. But one of the things it's known for is its good controls. So I don't want to discredit that, but yeah, you just got to get good. That's what the kids say these days, right? You just got to get good. But yeah, so the secrets didn't do anything, and I remember I was so disappointed because I think I beat this thing in 2 or 3 days. Like, I got it for Christmas, and within 2 days it was done. But what really killed me was it shows you a percentage on your, when you open up your game file, it'll show you your amount of playtime and your percentage. And I thought that percentage was of the game itself, like how many times, like how much of the game have you beaten, and it was more of, I think it's how much of the game, but then also combined with the secrets. So I don't know how it ultimately breaks down, but I feel like it's actually 60% or 65% is gameplay, and then 40%, 35, 40% are the secrets. So I beat it at like 58%. I'm like, wait, how's the game done if I'm only a little over halfway done? I thought I still had, over a little less than half the game to go, but it's factoring in how many of the secrets you get. And maybe it's only secrets. I'll have to see. I know at the end they show the screen that has my clear time or how much time I played, and then it shows the percentage. And I mean, I got random secrets like I didn't even know about. Like I jumped in. I think one of the secrets I got to because I missed a jump, and it ended up putting me there. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna. I wasn't trying to avoid them, but I wasn't necessarily trying to go after them. But yeah, that was such a bummer to me. It just seemed like such a short game. Whereas Donkey Kong Country 2, for those who don't know, it's a longer game in general, I think. But then the secrets. There's actually a reason to find the secrets. The Donkey Kong barrels or the DK coins, if you want to get those as a completionist, obviously you can do that. There is a little screen for that to celebrate your ranking with those. But if you want the true ending of the game, you have to find all the secrets, which is crazy because there are some that are really well hidden. But so there's a lot of motivation for finding the secrets, and sometimes the level might not be particularly challenging, but what it takes to find those secrets, or what it takes to unlock or to get to that barrel or to do whatever, that actually is very tedious. Like I remember there's one, I think, no, it's to get the DK coin, but there's one of them where you pretty much have to start the level over again if you screw it up, because it's the very last, it's the little target thing that you jump on to shoot the barrel up and clear the level, and the DK coin flashes briefly in a rotation, and so if you don't time it just right at the very end, you don't get the coin. You got to do the level, and the level's pretty punishing. So anyway, and then on top of that, you have the lost levels, which is the levels leading up to the true ending of the game. So it's a lot longer. I thought it was a lot more challenging, and it had a stronger theme. Like that pirate theme was really, really good. It really just added, and I don't know why. I mean, like people like different things. Duh. Did I need to say that out loud? What I mean to say is we like different genres. Like there are people that, I mean, a lot of people it seems that like the whole like horror genre. They like zombies, and they find that interesting, fascinating, post-apocalyptic stories. Like Mad Max. And the crazy thing, like, and you don't choose that. You don't choose what genre you like. You gravitate towards it. I'm more like I like pirate themed stuff, even though and I've done research on pirates, and obviously it's a lot more nuanced and not quite as spectacular or fantastic as a lot of the movies and stuff make it out to be, with the buried treasure and all that good stuff. But it's still the lore, the fantasy lore of pirates is intriguing to me. Things like Terminator that are, whether it's time travel or particularly like machine type things like RoboCop, Terminator, what was the other one that I was thinking of? Johnny Five is alive. What was that? Short Circuit. Really anything with technology, anything kind of robots, androids, when it's well done. There was a book called Not Quite Human, and they made a movie of the week out of it. It wasn't like a theatrical release, and I thought it was really good as a kid. And then I watched it older. I was like, oh, they didn't really do it great justice. But I mean, I think they hit the basic gist of it. But on the cover, it was really cool. It had this kid, like, he looks like a normal teenager, but he's like falling backwards, and his chest is open. It's got all these wires and stuff in there, and his dad's like reaching for him. So it's, I don't know, I don't remember if that was a scene in the book. I don't think it was, but it was just the idea. And I remember and his name was Chip, which was, microchip or whatever. And I remember I walked around the neighborhood pretending I was Chip, pretending I was an android as well. I had like a little fake paper thing under my shirt that I could, open up and pretend I had whatever. But unfortunately, I wouldn't call myself a method actor or method performer, but I was going through the neighborhood, and I just, I would act kind of android-ish or robotic. I mean, just totally nerd stuff. And of course, the neighborhood kids had their fun with it, and they're like, well, then it wouldn't hurt if I punched you in the back. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what the heck I said or how I said it, but I remember getting hit very hard in the back, and it hurt like heck, and I still try to pretend like it didn't. I don't know. Don't ask me. I got beat up as Superman, for crying out loud. That's right. Yeah, Superman. It's the reason why Superman does not exist in the world today is because he got his butt kicked when he was 7 years old. Well, he didn't get his butt kicked. He got his cape stolen. So I had the Superman outfit ensemble that was comprised of pajamas, essentially. You know, with they had the little wrist things and the ankle things. But it was unlike a lot of the goofy Superman costumes where they actually have the word Superman. It has a picture of Superman on it. The pajamas were the real deal. They were blue, and it had the emblem on the chest, and I think they had like the gold waistband. It wasn't an actual belt, but they actually made the waistband look like a gold belt, and it had a cape. It was a very short cape, but it went to about, I don't know, it was ended above my waist, but it had Velcro tabs here. But it was just enough of a costume that I could put it underneath my peach-colored polo shirt and my jeans, and I could walk around the neighborhood with it, pretending like I was Clark Kent, coming back from a long day of work. I parked my bicycle behind the electric box behind the house, and then, of course, I heard a cry for help. And I ducked behind the electrical box, and I took off my peach shirt. It took me a little while to get it off. At least I wasn't so method that I thought I could actually rip the dang thing. Anyway, so take off the shirt, get out of the pants. Luckily, nobody came by while I was in the process of changing, but there I was, Superman, with my Velcro, I don't remember what they were. I can't remember the brand, but yeah, my little Velcro shoes and my Superman pajamas complete with Velcro cape. And I proceeded to fight crime. Unfortunately, my crime fighting endeavors took me towards the creek at the end of there was a creek. We had our housing development. It was Bentley Circle, and then there was a creek, and then on the other side of it was kind of like our mirror image. It was called Windale Court, I think. And it's pretty much our exact neighborhood, same kind of housing and everything, same situation, just a mirror, essentially. Anyway, I was down there, and I was doing some rescuing, and some of the neighborhood kids from there, who in general were a little more mean. It was almost like Shelbyville and Springfield in The Simpsons, where Shelbyville is just a little meaner, a little like, eh. Anyway, I mean, I don't really know that was the case. It felt like that. It felt like we tried to make it a rivalry, but there really wasn't one because we didn't have enough neighborhood kids. We all came together to play sports and army and whatever else because there just weren't enough of us to do it on our own. But some of the kids came down, like 3 of them, and I mean they were in middle school. I was early elementary. And yeah, so of course, I didn't drop the charade when they came by or run away. I continued to be Superman. And soon Superman had his cape taken away, and he was trying to get it back, and they were playing keep away with it, and eventually threw it and almost went down the sewer. And I think that's when they stopped. So they didn't assault me or anything. There was no affliction, no chance for me to prove just how bulletproof I was or anything. But they did bring Superman to tears by playing keep away with his cape, and that was the last time I ever patrolled the neighborhood. And who knows what crimes I could have stopped. But you know, when you take away Superman's Velcro cape, you can't expect them to come back. He just says the world is too wicked. I'm going back to Krypton. So yeah, I don't know how that can of worms got open. See, like I said, this is kind of a therapy session. Ah, Diddy. So yeah, there's that. Oh, well, because I was talking about Chip from Not Quite Human, me pretending to be not quite human, and being injured as such, and then Superman, same thing, just not being assaulted, just being humiliated, essentially. But yeah, so the different genres. We like different genres, is my point. And so pirates is just something that I've always thought was kind of cool, even though actual piracy, was a lot of times was very, very brutal and terrifying. And sometimes the reprisals against them were just as brutal and terrifying. I mean, just, with the times, there's just barbaric practices all over, and attempts, to apply justice in the most effective way. In theory, that should be the goal, is to create deterrence, I don't know. It really, I don't think even now we've nailed it. It's like, are we sending people to prison hoping that they'll become better people? because a lot of them, unless you go to for life, you got a lot of people that go to prison for some pretty rough things and they get right back out. And the recursion rate, I think, is over 30%, over 33 or something. So unless you do something, drastic or different, or, make a change in their lives, or they make a change in their lives, pretty good chance they're going to go back to doing what they did that got them sent to prison in the first place. So, but prison isn't a great place. It's not designed, doesn't seem to be designed to create an atmosphere where people want to change. That doesn't mean that people don't, but I've worked with people in my last job that they were hell bent on changing. They've been in and out of prison for years, and they were like, I need to turn my life around. I got a daughter, I got all this stuff, and so I'm just grateful to have this job and be able to provide. And the next thing you know, they're calling out, on really flimsy reasons. Just there's drama going on at home. It's like that. You should never feel comfortable calling out of work because there's drama at the house. Like, that should never be something you think is justified. Like you can't, there's some things where you could be like, look, you're sick. I think this is where I started having problems. Yep. You're going to see that exact same mistake, for the next 5 minutes. I don't know how to explain it, folks. If you're listening to this, just know it's in the very first level of the mountain, the Gorilla Glacier. And yeah, it's just, I was on a hot streak. I was doing really well. And this was my first level that I just was like, what the heck am I doing? Just making the same mistake over and over and over and over again. Couldn't explain to you how or why that happened, but as you shall see with your own eyes, it did happen. But anyway, but yeah, I don't know how getting into prison talk, but that's to say, there's just such a strong, or I don't know. I guess there's a strong compulsion to do it, because once you get out, and the other thing too is, here, now I'm not trying to make it a definitive stance about this, but it does strike me as odd that the prison system, in theory, if they release somebody out into the world again, they should be effectively saying, we're only doing this because we think they have paid their debt to society and they're not going to be an issue. They're not going to be a threat. Otherwise, why the heck are you letting them back out? Now, I know that doesn't really work out necessarily, because you get a prison sentence, and if you serve out your sentence, you get out regardless of whether they think you're good enough or not. You can't just be like, well, just kidding, we're going to keep you in for a few more years. I'm not a proponent of that. At the same time, it is very bizarre that, okay, you're releasing these people back into them back into the world, but yet they now have a record. They now have things that make it harder for them to get jobs, to get whatever. So it's like, you want them to move on, you want them to acclimate back into society, but yet they have this big blotch on their record that makes it very difficult for that to happen. And you can't fault, certain employers. Like, I think you tried to get on, I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was something, okay, I understand if you went to prison for X, Y, and Z, they probably don't feel comfortable having you work this particular job just because, it could be a temptation or whatever. But at the same time, if you can't give them a chance, that's when one of the reasons that the compulsion comes back, because you're like, well, I can't make a decent living an honest way, so I might as well go back to the lifestyle that I was doing before. At least there, I knew what I was doing. At least there, I was able to make money or what have you. So it's not to justify it, but it does, again, I think ideally your prison system would figure out, okay, what are we trying to accomplish with this, and make sure that our policies and how we run these prisons, that it's done in a way to foster, to bring us towards that goal. That's just my thought, because I'm like, you do hear people turning their lives around in prison or coming out of prison, but you hear a lot more of it being just it's a very adverse situation coming out of prison and trying to assimilate, get back into normal life. Yeah. And that's a little bit more of that was a mistake, but it did not bite me in the butt, thankfully, for anybody who's actually watching the game. A lot of pressure here. Finally got to a place where I got out of that rut that I was in, and did not want to blow it all here. Have to go through that again. It's really not that hard of a level. I just kept making, like I said, made the same stupid mistake several times. Just kind of blew my mind. So anyway, and I'm not even sure how I got into that. Prison, being Superman. I don't know. Maybe it was tied to that. Whatever. So yeah, I guess all that to say, I liked the theme of the second Donkey Kong. This one, I mean, it didn't really need one. I mean, it was just introducing the series, and it's pretty much just get the bananas back, and it's a tropical island but I mean, I will say, in both series, I mean, you had the same composer, Wise. I can't remember his first name, but the music is fantastic in both of them. And of course, Donkey Kong 3, that was a game, like, I was a little too old at that point. I remember I laughed so hard at this part. Watching Donkey Kong, particularly Donkey Kong, when he goes up and down the rope, the animation, it just looks I found it quite amusing. That, I don't know what the heck I was doing. Donkey Kong 3, yeah, I was, I think, going to college at that point. In fact, I remember the year that I wanted it, the year I asked for it, was probably the least Christmassy year we had. We were in the middle of moving, and so we didn't have that was one year we didn't have a tree, because there was even one year where we bought a bunch of camping gear in like October, like September, October, because we decided as a family we wanted to go camping and do that a little more regularly, which we didn't really do. We did it a few times, but not with any regularity. But my parents spent a lot of money on a nice tent and cooking stove and everything, and pretty much said, "Now, you guys, this is kind of our Christmas. You know, this is instead of having Christmas, we're just going to buy all this camping gear so we can spend time together as family." And of course, me and my sister, I was probably 7 or 8 and she was 2 or 3. So, I mean, not that we really had much say in it, but we were just like, okay. Because at the time, you're not thinking down the road consequence. You're not thinking Christmas morning, no presents. You're just thinking, cool, get camping stuff. And camping is cool and camping is fun. I was in the Cub Scouts for a little while, so it was kind of like a thing where I was like, oh, camping is the coolest thing ever. But, sure enough, you get right around Christmas and, there's nothing, the house isn't decorated. I mean, not that we had to have presents in order to celebrate Christmas, but it kind of, we just did minimal. I just remember there wasn't a whole lot in the house that year, and it just felt so barren and yeah, just kind of sad, kind of depressing, because my dad was really big into Christmas, so we always had, no matter what we were doing financially during the year, like I didn't get a lot. I was wearing, the cheapest shoes and the cheapest clothes and all that. Like we didn't have a ton of money. It was a single income family, and Dad did well enough, but during the year there wasn't a whole lot of, and they didn't do the allowance thing. So other than birthday and Christmas, really not much. But Christmas he always made it special. I mean, him and my mom, but they made it a special time for us. So it really hit hard when we didn't have a Christmas that year. That said, I remember I woke up, probably was like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, a normal time to wake up for Saturday, because again, why am I going to wake up early? There's no presents. But I started walking downstairs, and I saw around the banister there was, it's not holly, I don't think, but it's the Christmas tree greenery stuff, but it's in a ribbon or a strand, so it was like wrapped around the banister with lights. I was like, that wasn't there before, and so it's just giving off this kind of warm glow, and I come downstairs further and I catch a glimpse of the tree. So my mom and dad had actually bought a artificial tree, and they spent the whole night decorating it, put ribbons on it and all our decorations, and they put that, like I said, that whatever that stuff is around the banister, and they had it hanging in different places, and it was Christmas. Aside from the fact that because it was an artificial tree, that was the first year that you couldn't smell Christmas. Didn't have that evergreen tree smell. It was Christmas, and we had gifts and everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, Hammer, Mom and Dad, look. And I can't remember if Santa was still a thing back then. I don't think so. But either way, Christmas came to our house that morning, and it was a great. And it ended up, I don't remember exactly what I got that year, but it was a good year. It wasn't like a token Christmas where, okay, we did the tree and everything, and here's a gift or two. It was a full blown Christmas, And I just remember got a lot of cool stuff and was very happy with it. That's not when I got this game. It was much earlier in my life that happened. But I say that to say there was only one other time where we had a kind of we were going to have a lukewarm Christmas, and then it ended up being amazing. But the year that this Donkey Kong 3 had come out, and that's pretty much all I'd asked for Christmas at that point, because it was really only the Super Nintendo game that I didn't have. And I'm I think 17 at the time, 16 or 17, so it's kind of, there just wasn't a whole lot out there that I was interested in, and I didn't get it that year. They couldn't find it. They couldn't get it. I ended up getting Madden 97, which I feel bad saying it, but it was just, I was like, that wasn't the only football games I like on game systems are Tecmo Super Bowl. Not the first one. That was a little too rough for me. We only had 4 plays to pick from. That one is actually, the Super Tecmo Bowl is the first one that I really liked. And then Super Tecmo Bowl on the Super Nintendo. Was it Tecmo Super Bowl and Super Tecmo Bowl? I don't know. Either way, those 2 games. Those are only like football games I like to play. And then NBA Jam Tournament Edition is the only basketball game I really like. And then Blades of Steel is the only hockey game I like. Everything else, it's just, you could say it's too complicated, but it's not. I'm impressed by the visuals and how much they can simulate it. But I think when it comes to sports games, I'm not looking for a sports simulator. I'm looking for that goofy, kind of just fun, easy to pick up. You learn the few buttons, and you in an NBA Jam, you're just kind of pushing. You got your block button, and you do your dunks or you do your 3-pointers, and you just accept that the RNG is going to be bonkers, especially for the computer. But that it was it. So, but I was never. And Madden for the Super Nintendo, was not great. It wasn't horrible, but it was not great. But they did what they could. But that was it. And I remember I opened it at the dinner table. Like, we didn't have a tree that year, nothing. It was literally just, I got that, and then I got like a little thing of cologne, which I haven't worn cologne in years, like ever. I think there were 2 years maybe off and on that I wore cologne, like my junior and senior year in high school. After that, I never wore cologne. I just didn't see the point in spending money on it, especially because you get, most deodorant, a lot of deodorant now is pungent enough where, like, I've had people say, what kind of cologne is that? I'm like, it's Old Spice, Coral Reef or whatever it is. But yeah, so there was that one Christmas that like, and even if they had been able to get it, like I said, it just didn't feel like Christmas. But literally open up presents at the dinner table. It's just that was so weird. And I think it was because we were in the middle of the move, but I thought we moved in the summer for some reason. I don't know. However it worked out, that was a really kind of abysmal Christmas. And then it just didn't help that it was, the one game the only thing I really asked for that year, couldn't get it because they couldn't find it. Which is really weird to think, but that's the way it was back in the day, before Amazon, before really eBay even. If you couldn't find it in the local stores, there may have been certain areas or ways that you could order it from somewhere, but typically you go around to the Toys R Us, you went around to the places in the mall, you went to your haunts, where you knew that video games were being sold, and if they didn't have it, you were just out of luck. Like, you just weren't going to get it. Because I remember when I didn't have a Nintendo when Super Mario Brothers 2 USA came out, but I just remember it was really hard to get that year. There were parents, like, they did an interview with a guy who did, I think he went to like 25 different stores or something in the New York area trying to find it and hadn't been able to get one. So you had some really, really determined parents to get this up. Now, all the thrill of the hunt is taken out. Granted, you can get it. It's nice to be able to get it easily, but you don't really have to work for it anymore. Which, having experienced Christmas as an adult, not as a parent, but as an adult, you just realize, it was really great as a kid, because you weren't messing with traffic, you didn't have to worry about buying the stuff, it just showed up for you on the day. But man, as an adult, just having to work in retail or work in food service, you're like, man, it's supposed to be 'tis the season, it's supposed to be joyful, and it's one of the most stressful times of the year, especially for parents, people trying to buy gifts. It's just ridiculous. But I think maybe some of that, all of that surrounding Donkey Kong Country 3 is part of the reason why I didn't care for it very much. But also, it really, when you have one of the characters be a baby, it's really hard to feel like it was made for, I don't want to say a mature audience, but like a young adult audience, which I think is what like Donkey Kong 2 was geared towards. Even though the gameplay wasn't necessarily harder or easier, didn't change all that much. It just, the presentation looked more childish. It seemed like the sprites were bigger, the enemies were a little bit bigger. It was almost like a Fisher-Price version or not Fisher-Price, but like a Duplo version versus Lego. You know, just a little clunkier, a little bigger, not quite as cool looking. I don't know. It wasn't fantastic. It wasn't great. And then like at the end, instead of having like in Donkey Kong 2, you know, you have, you know, Diddy's doing that, or he's got the boombox, you know, he's got the hat turned back with sunglasses, he's got this whole little thing, dun, 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 dun. And then Dixie has the they're like punctuated moments of high energy that celebrate you completing a level. And in the third one, it's like you got this little mini flagpole that like you don't even have to really jump up on, and it just has this like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. It's just so different. It's why did we make these choices? But yeah, so I played it. I eventually got my hands on it years later, and I remember playing it. I was like, I mean, I liked the level design. I liked, like, they had places where you had water mixed in with land, so which I thought was just cool. Like you're running around on land, and you can jump into this little water thing and go down and go around. And they had cliff faces, and like graphically in that way, it was really good. The music was different. You had a different composer, and it was good in its own way. It just didn't have that. I mean, obviously a different composer. You know, you can have different composers that are good, but you can hear the difference. You hear a lack of a certain sound, or it doesn't quite have that memorable hook. It's pleasant music, but it's not memorable per se. And that's how I describe Donkey Kong Country 3. But I only played it twice, and I think I only genuinely beat the whole thing once. And it just didn't draw me back. And it was really convoluted. It was it was a collectathon, a lot of stuff for you to collect. Whereas here, obviously here you could beat the game for what it was completely without having to find any secrets, because all they did was give you extra lives in a roundabout way. Then the second one, all you had to do, you found the secrets, and it unlocked the Lost World, and the led you to the actual ending of the game. Donkey Kong Country 3, I think you had to get these tokens, and then you had to get free a bird, and then you had to get this and that. There were like 3 or 4 things you had to get in order to ultimately enable you to get to the final level. And it wasn't even all that compelling. It didn't have a main theme other than kind of almost like a Sonic-esque. You know, King K. Rool or Captain Von Rule, or whatever the heck his name was. You know, he was transforming the animals into mechanized versions of themselves. I don't know why I did that. Just cart roll, dude. Just cart roll. You know what you got to do. Whatever. Like I said, it was mushy mind. I think by the end of this week, I should be back in the proverbial saddle and ready to take on the world. But I knew I didn't need a whole lot of brain power to beat Donkey Kong Country. It doesn't take all that much. But yeah, I don't know. And I mean, hey, there are people, Donkey Kong Country 3 is their favorite, but it just didn't work for me. And I think it was just a lot of things. It didn't have at that age, you really don't have a lot of the nostalgia factor, and things that I said before. It felt like a more childlike version of it. I mean, the end screen, here we go. You go from like seeing Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong kind of like beat up with black eyes and like bandages in this one when they're for their game over screen. That's there, and you don't see it on here because I'm so amazing that I never got a game over, but that's what you see when you get a game over. So okay, you go from beat up. The second one, Dixie and Diddy Kong are locked in a cage. Like you see that they've got the bars on the door, or whatever, and they're sitting back to back, and it's just a very grim looking situation. Like, okay, you've been captured. Donkey Kong's been captured. You've been captured. It's kind of a a letdown. Now the music, interestingly enough, I remember seeing some comments. The music really changes people's perception, because the music in for the end of this one, for the end of the original Donkey Kong Country, is very somber and very mournful. It's got this it's using kind of the jungle theme and everything, but it just really just sounds very final and very just sad and grief stricken. More than it probably should for what the kind of game this is. But yet the visual is just, it's Donkey Kong like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got my butt kicked, and Diddy going, oh, I'm beat up. So they're beat up, but they're, they can fight again another day. But the music really makes you feel just like this is just, it's the end. And almost like if the music would fit better if you were looking at like tombstones. Like that's it's that finality, that really grief-stricken finality. I don't know how else to describe it. And yet the second one, which is Diddy and Dixie locked in a cage, it has kind of this like, okay, I can't do it. I can't do it in my mouth. But if you listen to it, it doesn't sound all that bad. It just kind of sounds like, try again next time. And that's how people were interpreting it. But I'm like, this is like imprisonment. Like, you're not going anywhere. Who knows when you're going to get out again. That had more of a grim, mournful vibe to it in terms of the visual. But because the music was a little more lighthearted, it was a little more like, and maybe they asked him to change it. Maybe he had something different, and they're like, "Whoa, that just sounds too." You compare that with the visual, and it just sounds too dark. So like lighten it up with the music a little bit, make the music sound a little more like, you get them next time, you crazy kids. That's kind of what the music sounds like, which is, I think it fits the first image, the first game much better, and the more morbid, more grief-stricken makes more sense there. But the third game, it's Dixie and Kitty are in a freaking crib, and the door closes, and people are like, oh, it's so creepy, the door closed. I'm like, okay, so they're in a room, they're in a bedroom, and the door closes, and now they're, she's in but it wasn't a cage, it was just a playpen or a crib. Okay, you could climb out of it. It wasn't, and Dixie didn't even look like she was just kind of sitting there like, oh gosh, here I am stuck with this baby. She didn't even look like she was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? It was just a weird, like I said, it was just all over more Kitty. And like all the Donkey Kong characters, like Diddy, that works for Diddy. Now it'll work for Diddy when he's older. It's fine. Donkey, same thing. Okay, it's not age specific. Candy Kong, Cranky Kong. I mean, Cranky, you could say probably when he was born, Cranky would have been a weird name. But they call the young guy Kitty Kong. It's like, well, that works while he's a baby, but as soon as he's a young adult or a teenager, he's not going to want to be called Kitty anymore. It's just, that's weird. And then when he's Donkey Kong Country's age and he's his size, you're still calling him Kitty. It's gonna sound like, you're gonna think he's like George from of Mice and Men. Okay, what am I gonna do? Like he's got the mind of a child. I just think they're setting him up for failure. That's all I'm saying. But it's just weird. Like everybody else has a non-age specific name, but then you name him Kitty Kong. There's just so much wrong with it. I just don't get it. But some people love it, and I think it's a lot of people that grew up with it. I think when you're a kid, like it's beautiful and tragic how impressionable we are as kids, and so how like there are people that love the prequels because they saw them when they were like 10 years old, and as 10-year-olds the prequels made sense, and they weren't stupid, and they weren't ridiculous, and they didn't have lore that contradicted the original Star Wars trilogy. And I would like to think that because of Star Wars, like the original trilogy's popularity, I mean, as much as Jedi gets kind of crapped on, it was still pretty popular. It wasn't considered like a franchise killer. It wasn't like the Game of Thrones final season where you're like, oh man, I don't even know if I want to watch the first 7 seasons because the 8th one is so bad. I mean, Jedi, it was serviceable. It wrapped up I think the plot points that people really cared about, and just had a bunch of stuff that. This is another one of the levels right here, by the way, that you're going to see for a little while. I never hated Poison Pond, but I developed a hatred for it when I played this a couple hours ago. But I think, people of all ages enjoyed the original trilogy. I think it was mature enough, and even when Lucas had to kind of each movie he had to retcon it a little bit to adjust for the fact that he hadn't really planned out the story. I mean, originally Darth Vader was, he hunted down and killed Luke's father. That was the original story. And then when we're going to make Vader Luke's father, now we've got to change it a little bit. Now when Jedi comes along, we have to ask Obi-Wan why he lied about it. Well, it's from a certain point of view. So even the fudging they had to do. And I mean, then you've got the Leia situation where initially it was kind of like, okay, kind of a love triangle thing going on, and Empire, it's definitely more of a Han thing, and Luke and Leia aren't related, so she plants one on him, and it's not weird because, okay, maybe Leia's going to end up with Luke. Who knows? And when Han ends up in the Carbonite, it could have very easily, if Harrison Ford had gotten his way and he never came back to reprise his role in Jedi, it could have been, all right, Luke and Leia end up together because Han Solo's gone, and they come together at the end and whatever. But that's not how the direction Lucas took it. But he had to retcon it because that wasn't when he wrote the script for the previous movie for Empire Strikes Back. He didn't have that extra familial connection there. It's like every movie he tried to make, an additional, more profound connection between the characters. But anyway, I think it stood on its own for many generations. That said, the recent movies and even the prequels kind of slapped me in the face really quick, and not really quick. They slapped me in the face pretty hard. And so just because it's a movie that's on the screen doesn't mean it's infallible. It's telling you a story, but it doesn't mean that it's a good story. It doesn't mean that it's a well-told story or that the characters are well done. You just have this idea. I had this idea as a kid, and even as a young teenager, I was right up until the prequels, really. I just thought if it's in the theater, you may like it or you may not like it, but it's not really a bad movie. It's just, do you like it or do you not like it? And the idea of it not being sound in different levels, that maybe the music was bad, or maybe the screenwriting was bad, or maybe the acting was bad, it doesn't really occur to you because it's like a packaged product. It's like, it's this, you either like it or you don't, but it's made by professionals, and if you don't like the story, it's not because the story is bad, it's just because you don't like you're just not a fan of that particular story. But the prequels were the first time where I really realized it's, the Star Wars universe is not infallible. Lucas is not infallible. The stories that are being told, they can be poorly told. They can be poorly written. You can have bad characters. You can have bad plot points. You can have lines that are cringeworthy. And it's not just a given that because it's a movie and it was made that it's fine. And you just like it or you don't. You say, well, I don't like it, but I didn't like it because it wasn't really well done. And I think a lot of people still have that mindset. They go to the movies and they're just, you say, well, you may like it, may not, but I'm just going to see what's. They're looking at it as, I don't know. It's a really weird concept, but it's. I really don't know how to articulate it at this point. But like that story could only be told that way. Like they don't think about that. Like somebody was actually telling me, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole with this, but they actually quoted a line from a movie trying to make a point about real life, and it was a comic book movie. Like, why do you think they said this line in this movie? It's because this is who these people really are. And well, they actually said, why do you think they said that line in the movie? I said, because the writers were crap. The writer done how to write. But he's like, no, it's because this. I'm like, it's a work of fiction. These characters, what characters say in these movies, especially fictional movies, is not gospel. It's not, something you can hang your hat on. Somebody wrote that line, and that somebody is, probably in Hollywood, probably in that system. They have their own perspective on things, and regardless of where they're at or who they are, it's a human being writing it, and other people are saying it, but it's not like the movie itself has some kind of empirical or ultimate value or that is able to speak truth by virtue of it being a movie. It's not like you can say, well, it says this and therefore that's true. It's like, no, all that means is somebody wrote it that way and they decided not to change it. Or they wrote it a certain way, but they were like, oh, the studio said, hey, we want there to be this line about blah, blah, blah in there. And so they worked it in, and sometimes it looks shoehorned, sometimes it works, but it's like, yeah, movies are not infallible pieces, or just like books. I mean, that you can go through a book. Now, I think for different people, different mediums, you have different standards. Like I have much lower standards for TV because when I was growing up, TV was always seen as a lot more campy, low budget, not quite as good. And a lot of it was just like sitcoms and shows like Knight Rider that kind of had a little potential, but they weren't meant to be taken as seriously as like a film. And so I never expected as much from my TV shows. But they've come a long way, and now they're getting, they've gotten bigger budgets, and streaming, shows that are made for streaming are given much more of a budget, and a lot of the bigger actors, a lot of the bigger stars are willing to work for TV, whereas before it was considered an insult. Like if you broke into the movies, you never went and did TV. I mean, maybe you did a guest appearance on, a sitcom or something that was trending really well, like a Seinfeld or Friends or Frasier back in the day. But it was a guest appearance. It was kind of like a little bit of what do you call that? Just it was fanfare. It was just an extra like wink and saying, hey, this is how popular this person is. Now they're on the show. How isn't that cool? They're the one who played Bruce Willis showed up and played the dad for, I think it was a Friends episode. He was somebody's father. And it was just kind of cool. You're seeing Bruce Willis, the star of the Die Hard series in a sitcom, but he was never going to be the star of a sitcom because that's TV. But anyway, that's all changed. But same thing, books. I can usually tell within the first 3 or 4 pages, if not sooner, that this is not going to be my kind of book, and I just won't read it. And it's not that it's the content, it's just you can tell if it's written well, like if it's something that is going to resonate with you, something that you can immerse yourself in, get immersed in. And once you can do that, I'm like, as long as it keeps me entertained, as long as it's a page turner, if it can keep me reading to the point where my eyes get kind of dry and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to go to bed, but I can't stay awake. But oh my gosh, I want to finish it. I want to find out how this ends. Like I like those kind of books. And I grew up. My mom had the Nancy Drew books by Carolyn Keene, and a lot of those were page turners. I would read, read late into the night with those, and wake up the next morning and read some more. Clive Cussler, a lot of his books, not all of them, but a lot of them I enjoyed. Some of them kind of felt formulaic and just kind of like, okay, we're just kind of rehashing the formula, but at least a lot of the earlier ones were page turners, and he made really good bad guys that you wanted to see get their comeuppance. I don't know, do bad guys get their comeuppance, or do they get their just desserts? Like, I don't know if a comeuppance is like you learn a lesson, or if it really is retribution, or like I said, get what they deserve. I don't remember, but in any case, books like that. Lord of the Rings, I enjoyed. I remember I read it. I started reading it when I was in 7th grade. And admittedly, I skipped. I was more interested in The Ring. Anything that talked about the ring, the lore of the ring I was interested in. Anything with Sam, Frodo, and Smeagol, or Gollum. And everybody else I kind of skipped over. So when I'd read the books, I would kind of skim over a lot of the, like Aragorn, all his stuff, and Legolas and Gimli and all that, and it would just read, like in the Two Towers and Return of the King, I would mostly read about the parts that featured Frodo and Sam. That was when I was in 7th grade, because that's what held my interest. The Ring was what captivated my attention, how it worked, and what the impact it had, and what happened to Gollum, because I had nightmares about Gollum from Rankin and Bass's animated version. The dude was just freaky as heck. And so I was very fascinated by his history and how he became what he was. And then as I got older, that kind of switched. I stopped. And in fact, in the movies, I created my own version of it that really minimizes Frodo and Sam's role in it, because I just found those parts to be kind of tedious in a way that they weren't in the book. I think the way Frodo is characterized, I think Elijah Wood could have played him fine, but I just think he was... Man, I'm going down what a rabbit hole that is. I'm not going to go any further than that, but I'll save that for an actual discussion about the series. I don't know where that would fit in anything that I do, because I don't have any Lord of the Rings games. I do have Shadows of Mordor, but I don't know that I would be necessarily talking about Lord of the Rings and that. But Anyway, let's see if I can backtrack a little bit. Oh yeah, the infallibility of movies, or the kind of the perceived credibility or veracity of film. But when it comes down to it, it's just a bunch of professionals doing what they do very well, or doing what they do in theory at a high level. But ultimately, you could have a character say something, and it has nothing to do with the way that character is written, or that by virtue of that character's character, by virtue of what they would actually do in that situation. It's they need this action scene to happen, and so this character is going to do something. And usually you can kind of call that out. You'd be like, I didn't really understand why, but you got people that they're giving the movie the benefit of the doubt, or they're seeing it as a full picture that you can't dissect pieces of it. You just go, do you like the movie? Did you not? This is it. It is a work, and you either like the work or you don't. If you like the work, then everything in that work has a reason and a response. So you have these people that will defend it and say, well, of course you did it because, and list off a bunch of in-world reasons that either have no foundation, or they're really reaching, or they just don't make, you disagree and say they don't make as much sense. Whereas if you're looking at it as, pieces that come together to create a whole, which should be hopefully bigger than the sum of its parts, and make you feel like it is this, for all intents and purposes, a true story. Like it is its own story, and you're not thinking, well, why did they write that ending the way they did? Or why did they create this character that way? Or why did he make that decision? That's not the way he would do it. But you could tell they wanted to get to this point in the movie. They wanted to make sure that there was this much tension at this particular point, because it was the rising action. We're right at the climax. So of course they're not going to do it this way. But, then when you break it down, you go, okay, well, they could have done that better. There was another way to do that. There should have been another way to do that, because it kind of breaks the immersion when it becomes patently obvious that it was form over function. I think that's the best way to describe it. I think when a movie has both form and function, when you have a scene that looks amazing and it makes sense for that scene to be there, and in fact, even better if the reason why it looks so amazing was something that was organic to the story, to the narrative, that's when it works really well. But when you can tell that it's like, oh, the only reason why this scene was there, or why this line was there, is in order to, so that they could have the rule of cool, so that they could make it look good, then it kind of loses a little something. There's that juxtaposition. They should be hand in hand, form and function together, not making obvious sacrifices to function in order to have the form. But anywho, all that to say, I feel like I've said that a lot tonight. I don't know actually if I said it, how much I said, but I think when it comes to video games, I'm a little more lenient on it, because it's, even when I find out how a video game is made, I can still enjoy the video game. It still doesn't feel like, I don't know, because it's programmed, because it's like, okay, yes, it took a human to program it, but after that, it's doing its own thing. Even though it's just following a program, it is acting on its own volition based on what you programmed it to do. So it does feel like it's almost, in a way, removed from the human experience after they're done with it. Like, this game is, it is giving you that experience. The stage was set by humans, but the actual interplay that you're having is these elements and this everything behaving in a way that it was programmed to do. So I don't know, there's just something surreal about that for me. I don't know why, but I can still appreciate it, and it doesn't diminish the experience. Whereas, sometimes once you know how the sausage is made, as they say, by watching behind the scenes, or having worked on movies and sets before, and what goes into them, that it's not quite like that. That it's not as fanciful or fun as it looks. It might have taken them 6 hours to get that one scene down, and 2 of the people had food poisoning, and it was hot, and it smelled like raw fish because the only location they could get was right next to a seafood packing plant. Just all that stuff that you just go, it's not nearly as fun in that regard. It's not nearly as surreal to be on a set of one of these movies as it looks. But yeah, Donkey Kong 3 was probably one of the few games I was like, I actually had an opinion about it. I didn't just take it as, this is just a good it's either it's a game you like or a game you don't. There's just elements about it that I didn't much care for. But like I said, there are people that love it. Oh, and that's how I got on that. Same thing with movies. When you experience it as a kid, whether it's nostalgia or a combination of nostalgia and some other factor that we really don't articulate very well, you have a lot more grace for it. You have a lot more appreciation for it, because it's almost like you always see it through the eyes that you saw as a young person, which isn't the same as nostalgia. Nostalgia is when something can take you back into a certain time, when something puts you in one way or another back in that time, or it reminds you of how you felt or what was going on at that time. It's more of like a memory-based thing, whereas I lost my train of thought. That's what's happening. I'm not trying to formulate a deep thought. I literally just can't remember what I was talking about. It's not nostalgia. Yeah, the eyes, you see it through the eyes of a child, so it's or through the eyes of your younger self. So it's like you're actually processing it, not the memories, but you're actually processing what you're watching and playing with the same eyes and mentality that you had when you were 10 or 11 years old. Which isn't bad, it's not harmful, but I think it makes it harder to be more skeptical or more critical of it, because you're just not terribly critical of things as a 10-year-old or younger. That was a mistake right there. And so I do think people see, and I would say, from my perspective, I can understand people liking Donkey Kong Country 3 more than I can understand people liking the Star Wars prequels. And definitely the sequels. That I cannot understand at all, other than, well, we won't even go there. The prequels, I mean, I can honestly say I held out hope. Even after Phantom Menace, I was really disappointed with Phantom Menace. But I was like, okay, in the next movie, Anakin's not going to be a freaking 7-year-old, or however old, 9-year-old, which was a mistake, I thought, in period. Like, you shouldn't have started him off that young, especially if it's supposed to be about him. But I was like, all right, it's going to get, it'll start feeling more like Star Wars after we get away from the kiddie stuff. And it didn't. It definitely did not. So I don't understand when people, I do know for a fact, if I talk to somebody and they say they liked it, I can almost guarantee they're at least 10 years younger than me. That's just the way it is. People my age, on as a rule, unless they're just kind of, I hate to, I'm not going to call what I normally call them, like, there's a word for people who have, loose standards in certain ways. And, anyway, I'm not gonna say it here, not because it's all that bad, but it's just not, it doesn't need to be included here. You probably know what I'm thinking. But you have a word for people that just like everything. They'll just, if it's a movie, they just like it, period. But if it's not one of those people, typically, people will admit, especially after the hype dies down, when the hype is going and all the media that they're listening to, that they spend their time with, and social media and everything, while all that hype is going on, there's really no way to convince them that what they're seeing is trash. But you give it a little bit of time to cool down. People aren't defending it as much. People aren't talking about it as much. And maybe they go back and watch it now with all the hype out of the way. I mean, I felt that way with Top Gun Maverick to a degree. I loved it in the theater. I thought it was amazing. I wanted to see it again. I only got to see it once, but I wanted to see it again. I really appreciated it. I liked it. I was excited to get it on DVD. I got it on DVD and I was like, it's okay. Like, the story is very basic. And a lot of the stuff that I appreciated about it was only because it was counter to what's been going on. Like, in our current day, the movies are big on disgracing, humiliating, and disregarding legacy characters and older characters, in favor of the new stuff, because and not even like there's no attempt to pass the torch. It's literally just very disrespectful and kind of throwing away the old to embrace the new. And the new, unfortunately, is garbage. A lot of the characters are garbage. People you don't care about. But that's been a trend in general in Hollywood for a while. So to see a movie where a legacy character like Maverick, I wish I could remember what his actual name is, when, for him getting respect, for him being shown as competent, for him having something to offer, that was I'm not going to say revolutionary, but that it bucks the trend, and it's refreshing because that's the way you want it to be in real life. I mean, many cultures have respected their elders or have more respect for their elders by virtue of the wisdom and what they've been able to do and what they have been able to accomplish. And the fact that whatever you have now, it's due at least in part to the work that the people who came a generation or two before you did. They've brought it to this point. So that's been there, but it seems to be a relatively recent trend that it's let's throw away the old and just disregard the old. And it's kind of disgusting. So a lot of it was just refreshing to not have that factor, or to see the legacy character respected. So it was like an artificial amazement. Like when I went back to watch it on DVD, I did watch it. Oh no, I don't think I did. I don't think I got all the way through it. I watched there are two. There's where Maverick is like, all right, I'm gonna make a bet with you guys. If you shoot me down or something, I'll do push-ups. He makes some wager with them, and he kicks but he beats everybody. And it's just like a really great sequence showing that. And then at the end, when, there's that. Then there's when he essentially does the run that they said, is impossible to do, and he does it to show them that it can be done. And for me, that was pretty much, those are the highlights of the movie. Even the final run is not all that exciting for me. And again, I'm not downing it. I just think, it was one of those things where there was a lot of people that I would listen to, their opinion on. I don't listen to critics at this point. Anybody who is established as a critic, I just automatically, I actually think lower of their opinion. I'm like, if they liked it and it's a movie I want to see, I'll be like, it's still not enough. Even if it's a movie I want to see and the critics like it, that's not enough for me to go see it. Because they've lost my trust, just like, the media in general. Although I would say, if I had to compare if I had to take one or the other, I would take a movie critic over news. News is just so egregiously skewed in so many different ways. I mean, you can obscure the truth through omission. You can obscure the truth through partial truths. You can obscure the truth through outright lies. And it's been demonstrated so many times that people still actually believe it. And I don't get it. But I will take critics, because at least the critics, they'll tell you why they liked it. And you can say, okay, well, I don't value those things. I don't think that adds anything to the movie. And that's the only thing you've been talking about. So I know that even though you say it's a good movie, when you tell me why you think it's a good movie, I can tell you I would not agree with that consensus. Whereas the media doesn't make that distinction. They don't say, well, here's the truth, or here's what our take is on it, but here's the actual footage, or here's the full context. They just give you their take on it, and you just have to either believe it or not. What that has to do with what I was talking about, I don't know. Therapy, right? Am I right? It's messy. And of course, I don't mean literally that I think this is not a therapy session. I'm not sitting here talking to you thinking this is therapy. It really, the gameplay was, I was not expecting to talk about it tonight. But like I said, I've got a little too much energy to go to bed, but not enough energy to do something actually meaningful. So I'm just figure I'll put this together, throw it up on there, and then hopefully tomorrow I've got the energy to do the F-Zero. Because the F-Zero, the commentary has a little more, it needs to have a little more energy. It's more fast-paced. And it's actually, the way I started, the way I've done it, is actually like commentating on the gameplay. Ostensibly from a streamer or gamer named Authums. But for this series, for like RPG and everything, it literally is just talk about what's on your mind. But I didn't want to just ramble like this for the RPG series. I wanted to try to keep that a little more coherent, a little more on topic if I can. But I thought it was bizarre that I really hadn't played Donkey Kong Country in a while, and I just wanted to see how fast I could do it. It's one of those games that, and I think they even said they programmed it, or the way they developed it was that so that you could, if you got good enough, you could run through it and it would look really good. Like you could, and I mean, there are moments I think in this playthrough where you can see a little bit of that. A lot of times I missed the mark. In theory, it's like, you do the one jump here to be safe, and then you jump on the bad guy. But if you're on point and you've played it really a lot, a while, and you're you're very comfortable with it, you can skip that little half jump and just jump directly on the bad guy and grab the rope and swing across, and it all kind of flows together. If you do it really well, if you execute it well, it looks really good. And that's kind of what I was going for, what I wanted to try to do. And obviously, as you can see, mixed results. Sometimes it does look good, and sometimes it doesn't. But excuse me. Even like Mario, you can run through it fast, but it doesn't necessarily look any more spectacular. It just looks like you had good precision. Whereas here, it is about precision, but it can look, stylistically, it can look pretty good. If you really know what you're doing. Like, you can pull off some cool looking moves. Or a sequence of events, just because of the way they set it up to do that. And that's kind of what like speedrunning, I think it would be, I wish it was all kind of like Donkey Kong Country. Now, I know there's glitches, or I'm sure there are glitches that people exploit, and I've got no problem with that. And I like the fact they have like glitchless categories, because for me, like, a speedrun is seeing the game run optimally. Like, obviously you've got your hero, whether it's Samus Aran, whether it's Mario or Donkey Kong or whoever it is, they're the hero. And in a movie, you're going to have a setback here and there, but generally they're, they beat the bad guys. They overcome, they do well. They don't die and have game overs. And so a speedrun to me is like seeing, this is how the hero narrative would manifest in this particular game. Just going through flawlessly, beating all the enemies, overcoming the challenges, and moving forward instead of like dying every so often, and it feeling like a very much like a video game. But speedrunning, it stops feeling like a video game, and it feels more like just really like a software exploiting. I don't even know. My brain is officially shutting down now. I really should have thought about the length of this video before I decided, here we go. Before I started to do this, because all the other videos are like 30 to 50 minutes long, and this one's like a freaking hour and a half. It's like, that means I need to talk for an hour and a half. I did not think about that when I started off on this venture, but that's all right. It is, hopefully, if you're not getting what you need out of the commentary, hopefully the gameplay is floating your boat, as they say. But that's the other thing I like about a game like Donkey Kong, because the music alone, like, I don't know that I could ever just sit and listen to video game music. At the very least, I'd have to be drawing or doing something creative while I'm doing that. But to be playing the game and almost have that be secondary to, like, you're listening to the soundtrack, but you're almost using the game, like playing the game as an excuse just to listen to the soundtrack. There's not every game can do that, but Donkey Kong 1 and 2 definitely, excuse me, are that, where you could just enjoy the heck out of the music, if nothing else. Especially when you get to the industrial. I think we're pretty much at the end of near the end of the game here, I think. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Right. Okay, it's just the K. Rool battle after this. Yeah, we're pretty much at the end of the game. I'm looking at the timeline. There's still a lot of time left, but that's because I let it play through the credits. And if there's nothing for me to say, I'll just let it go and let you just watch the credits and leave it alone. But yeah, we'll see. I seem to be running out. I haven't transitioned to anything new in the past 5 minutes. But yeah, just circling back around to that, I think there is a difference, and I don't know that there's a word for it, but there's nostalgia, and then there's seeing it through the eyes of a child, especially if that's when you saw it originally. I think a lot of people see their games, and I'll include myself in that. I'll really admit that I can't unsee Super Mario Brothers. I can look at it objectively in a way and just say, yeah, this 8-bit. I can understand why kids or whoever looks at it and goes, what the heck was this? It looks so basic and so blocky, and like it barely represents a human being. How is that Mario? But I see it with the eyes that I saw it as a child, and so it looks normal to me. It still reminds me, but but there's I can look at it and I can feel nostalgia, and I can look at it and just be like, this is a really cool game. But there's a little part of me that can look at it objectively and go, this is really rough. It's very basic. And you can't convince yourself, I don't know what the heck I was doing there. You can't really convince yourself, like say, well, you got to remember that this came out back then and it was transformative for that time. If you weren't alive at that point, you'd just be like, okay, I believe you, but I just can't. I personally cannot appreciate something just by virtue of the fact that it was done at a certain time when it was cutting edge. Like Citizen Kane, you watch that. I mean, I think that Citizen Kane is a fine movie on its own, but it was a big deal back when it came out, and it's okay. But I mean, it's still black and white. It's still, has a little bit of that. I don't know. I'm not sure how to phrase it, but it was kind of like a hybrid of theater acting and camera acting, like. If you really look at how characters acted or how characters are presented in the older movies, it's very stylized. It's very, I wouldn't say campy, but it's got that, it's definitely a performance for the camera, put it that way. Just like when you watch people on stage. Oh, now stage is a little bit different because your energy is so big. You're trying to fill that auditorium. You're trying to fill that theater with your presence, with your voice. So you're bigger. You got people in the back of the room that need to be able to see and hear you. So you've got to be big. You've got to be, your gestures have to be big, and you have to rein all that in if you're going to do that for the camera. And I think they were kind of halfway there. They were still doing it for, they were still kind of making it theatrical. Because if you look at it and go, man, if somebody actually just talked like that to me, that would just be very weird. It's only recently, relatively recent, I guess in the past 80 years or 60 years or so, that they've tried to mimic performance in real life. But even then, like you see some of these guys, you watch like Ocean's 11 came to my mind for some reason. Like Brad Pitt, he is film realistic. A lot of actors are film realistic, where they are realistic within the world of film, with in the context of a film, but still not real as if the camera was running and you're just seeing them in real life. They're not replicating reality. They are mimicking reality in a way that looks good for the camera. It would look goofy as heck. Maybe even if you're live, if you're not looking at it through that lens, you go, this looks a little campy. It looks a little hammed up a bit, but it looks great on camera. Whereas you have other people that just pretend the camera's not there, just act normal, and it works to a degree, but it does look different. It's not as polished. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully some of that made sense. I know what I'm trying to say. I just don't know that I'm articulating it well. And I really didn't prepare it anything. I just kind of was going to wing it. I was hoping I'd end up talking about Donkey Kong Country, but aside from just that, like I said, I got it for Christmas. I loved it. I was excited, but then I was bummed out because I beat it within a couple of days. And I've said many times on other videos, I'm not a gamer. I'm somebody who enjoys video games. Sometimes the idea of them even more than the actual execution or playing them. So I wasn't expecting to breeze through it, but I did. It was even worse because like on the second day, I was like, I don't know how there could be that much left of the game, but it says I'm only 56% done. So man, there's got to, I guess after, or I think maybe it was when I realized I was facing K. Rool. I was like, well, this is the end bad guy, but I'm only 60% done with the game. And I was like, well, I guess there must be more to it. Maybe you don't actually beat him. Maybe he, comes back later on in the game or something. And then it was like, nope, I got to the screen. I was like, well, that's it then, huh? So what else is there to do? And all there really is to find the secrets. But they don't do anything. They don't add to the game. There's just extra things to find. So yeah, I mean, I started saying it before. It's definitely much better than a proof of concept. But I think Donkey Kong Country 2 is the really maximizes the potential of the series. I don't know what the heck Donkey Kong Country 3 was. But it was still special. It was still it's a game, like I said, it's one of those therapeutic games where you can just play it, and it's easy enough that you can beat it, as I did here, in less than an hour and a half, 90 minutes to complete the game. I could just see the nice, see the end screen, and yeah, I died a few times. I probably could have cleared it. Probably spent about 5 to 10 minutes total replaying certain levels. I don't know if I could do it in an hour. Maybe that'll be a video for another time. See if I can if I can finish off K. Rool in under 60 minutes. I'm sure I can. I mean, I think speedrunners do it all the time. Maybe even but I wouldn't glitch it. I wouldn't be glitching to get there. I don't know. I'll have to do a little research and see if it's even possible. Because I don't think I blew 25 minutes worth on those. But whatever. Yeah, it was a cool thing. So I beat this on Christmas break. That was a thing, which is kind of nice. Like it sucks. I think we had like a week and a half total for Christmas break. It pretty much was from Christmas through New Year's, and it would suck if you got a game and you weren't able to beat it by the time you had to go back to school. Because then all you're doing when you're back to school is thinking, oh my gosh. Even then, I remember every year since I got the Nintendo. Anytime I got a game for Christmas, I would always bring the manual with me into school so that I would have the game with me in some form or another, even when I'm in school. So I was never away from it for too long. Like I was always reading about the characters or looking at the art style. And I remember just going crazy because I wanted to replicate the art style of this. But it's this 3D looking stuff. And I was like, I don't know how to draw that kind of stuff. I could draw Mario somewhat. Particularly my math and science notes for school are littered with drawings of Mario and various other things because I was so bored with the class that I had to do something. But I couldn't replicate this 3D rendered art style. Didn't have the skill back then. Probably even now. But it's still cool to look at. And so yeah, I would bring manuals into school, and when we'd have quiet time, I'd just read through them. It was a way of staying close to the game without being able to actually play it. I never brought the actual game in because I didn't want to get lost or stolen. And I couldn't do anything with it actually anyway. I didn't cuddle with it or anything. But the manual was just a way to try to get the most out of it. A bummer is, for games like this, when you really only have 2 action buttons and not a whole lot of other features, you're not really getting a whole lot deeper into the lore or into the the how-tos. Your enemies are pretty basic. You jump on their head and they die, or you would just avoid them because you can't jump on their head, and that was it. But it was still cool. Read the story, and like I said, just kind of stay immersed. I remember that now as I was thinking about it. It was for probably the first week or so after Christmas, I would bring in whatever manual or manuals if I got a couple games and just read them. Just to enjoy them. And that's why, I've gotten rid of, I don't own, none of the stuff that I have now is what I grew up with. I parted with it. Usually, I think most of the stuff I ended up losing when I went to college. I couldn't take it with me, and I was thinking about moving out, and I'm like, I'm not going to move back home, and my parents were like, hey, all this stuff is sitting in the attic, or whatever. And so I either gave my permission for it to be given away, or I gave it to my sister, or I gave it to a friend, or something. And had I known that retro gaming would end up costing or be valued as much as it is now, artificial or not, I sure as heck would have tried to keep hold of it. But I was able to keep all the manuals because those were easy to carry around. The boxes, the games, not so much, but I had a little box that just had all the manuals in there, and like I said, they were my way of connecting with it. But hey, thanks for going on this journey with me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun to play this, and yeah, if you watched this whole video, hats off to you. Hopefully didn't kill you too much watching it. But yeah, let's go ahead and see the final run time and percentage, completion percentage. Hour 15, 38%. There you go. Take care.